to this computer. All right. Probably a little closer to the microphone. Yep. Yeah.
And can the camera see me properly?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'll turn. Yeah, I've got yours.
And do you want me to look at you or the camera?
Yeah, you just look at me.
Yeah,
camera.
Cool. Great. Fireside chat style.
Yeah, it's going to be for mostly for Let's Talk Bitcoin. Yeah, for the audio is the most important anyway. So
yeah, perfect.
I'm already recording here. All right. Okay. Welcome to the Crypto Show, and today I've got Brittany Kaiser. And, recently I was just scrolling through Netflix, and I felt like Will Ferrell on Elf. I'm like, I know her. And I'm like, yeah, no, but I've heard this story before. And it's so the Netflix, if you haven't watched this, and this is Brittany Kaiser, of course, the Netflix original is The Great Hack.
The Great Hack, indeed.
And I knew so much. I thought I knew something about this. And I kept hearing about it, and I heard you talk about it. I met you at several different places, and I didn't realize how deep this hack really was. I remember you mentioning being like the social media person for Obama, and so I kind of thought you were like on the liberal side. And then I watched this, and then there's this Trump angle, and I'm like, wow, let's go.
A lot of people don't actually realize how much I mean it when I say how important blockchain is to me and how important blockchain is to solving so many of the world's greatest problems right now, especially in the digital age.
Yeah. So how did this you got started? How did you end up being the social media person for Obama? And then how did that transition into... Yeah.
So interestingly enough, I love politics. I love campaigning. I am on the liberal side. So I joined the Obama campaign when I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed 19-year-old intern and learned for the first time how to use data in politics. Fast forward about a decade later, after learning how to use data for marketing, for communications, and for humanitarian purposes, I was actually writing my doctorate about how the world could be made a better place if we could predict bad things before they happen. If we can predict war, we can predict famine, we can predict anything if we use advanced data analytics, right?
Well, that war is easy to predict. Like whoever has more oil than we do, they're going to get bombed.
Well, with the U.S. government, there are different ways of looking at that. But if you think about big data on a global scale, global big data sets, you can actually predict a lot of things before they happen. And we're right now sitting in a massive building full of cryptographers and blockchain developers who understand how powerful predictive analytics are and are building different platforms that are going to harness predictive analytics for good. And that's where I was actually when I joined Cambridge.
I also want to thank you for your Bitcoin marketing, your guerrilla marketing that you did during this movie. I noticed you'd have your Bitcoin phone out and just, you carefully placed the logos in all the right places. That was a great job. So.
Yeah, I did have the film crew come with me to some of the blockchain conferences that I was speaking at. And I spent quite a lot of time talking about why I thought distributed ledger technology for tracking and traceability of data, for transparency, for smart contract opt-in was going to be the way that for now the world should look to solve a lot of the data issues. The lack of transparency of where our data goes and how it's used is the big problem, which is why I'm here at the hackathon today, why I'm here at Wyoming Blockchain Week, why I'm here talking with you about this.
You're indirectly, you're kind of why I'm here. When I first met you in Austin, and I was talking to you, and you told me about Caitlin, and then fast forward, I end up at a Denver meetup, and they're telling me about the Wyohackathon. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going.
Right?
yeah, I'm gonna head on up there right now.
Yeah, when we first met, actually, I had just come back from the first time that I ever did any lobbying with Caitlin. What happened was that when Caitlin and Representative Lindholm first put together, obviously with an awesome group of people from the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition and other legislators, but they put together the first two bills. And I got told about that by a gentleman named Brock Pierce. And I said, you know what, guys? I love political campaigning. I love lobbying, but I'm only used to lobbying at the European Parliament and the United Nations. I don't know how to do it in Wyoming, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to bring as many people as I can with me. So we flew to Cheyenne to see what Caitlin was up to. And Caitlin taught us how to lobby in the parliament here, or sorry, not the parliament, the Congress. I spent too many years of my life in Britain. And we worked with legislators both in the House and the Senate to explain to them, here's what a blockchain is.
Yeah.
Here's what a cryptocurrency is. Here's what the underlying technology has the possibility to do. Here's where the industry is going. And it's so incredibly exciting that if you guys start to pass laws where Americans can start American blockchain companies here, you have no idea what you're going to see happen in positive ways to your state.
Exactly. So when you started off social media with Obama, like who was it that recognized your talent and then kind of propelled you into higher positions there?
Well,
how?
I got really lucky that it was actually Barack himself who, when he was a state senator, I met him and I loved the things that he was talking about. I met him when he was speaking at an environmental rally and there were only 30 people there to hear him talk. So I talked to him afterwards and I said, you know what, some of your ideas I'm really into. How can I help? And so he said, you know what, come and join my campaign. I'm running for Senate. So I worked on his senatorial campaign just as a volunteer, learning the first ways that digital communications were used in politics, writing emails to undecided voters. But I knew from then forward that he was someone that if he was ever going to run for president, I was going to support. So I actually dropped out of university to go work in Chicago once I got the internship.
Wow. I was a delegate in 2012. So,
oh, fantastic.
Yeah, for Ron Paul. So I was a Republican infiltrator.
Yes.
We had in Austin, we had this class, like all the Ron Paul people got together and we had training courses on how to act when you go before the elections committee to become a delegate. You know? And so I just went in there with probably one of these, Atlas Shrugged shirts on or something and started spouting off Ayn Rand stuff. And next thing you know, I'm a delegate.
Right.
And then from there on to the state. And then
I love it. I've actually always wanted to do that. That's such an interesting experience.
It was interesting in Texas. It was super interesting because it was very interesting. 30% of the delegates that were on the elections committee at the state level were Ron Paul supporters. The lieutenant governor of Texas got excluded from being a delegate to the national convention because of the Ron Paul supporters.
Really?
Yeah.
I could imagine he created an entire groundswell that still exists today, obviously.
Yeah.
Massive following.
Yeah. So
and for good reason.
I was proud of that we were at least able to accomplish that. But I think, afterwards, going through that and seeing how dirty they were to him the same thing happened in the Democrat Party not long after that on one of the votes, the floor votes where they just ignored what the floor was voting. That was crazy. I forget which one it was. I think it was Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah. Well, it happens a lot. And what I find so interesting about the work that's going on here in Wyoming is that it's bipartisan. The people here that are liberal have come together for causes that support individual rights, and the people here that are conservative a lot of them are more libertarian conservative than conservative proper. But everyone here has decided that protecting individuals and protecting the ability for entrepreneurs to build their businesses, but also for citizens to be protected in their investments and in their day-to-day life working with technology, that all those things are important. And it doesn't matter what party you're from, we can all agree on these principles because they're so important.
That's more common with people in rural areas. Like if you go to LA or Austin or New York, whatever, you get this extremist, like if you're a Trumpster, I'm not going to talk to you or whatever, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, what is this?
I've always said the one thing that I can really take away from the fact that I have worked in political consulting for both parties is that one of the biggest problems is that people choose to not understand each other, and they choose to decide that their partisan values are more important than collaboration. And
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest problems in politics today.
Yeah, that's insane. So how did the transition go from Obama to the Trump campaign? How did that work?
Again, it was accidental. It was after many years of wanting to learn more about data, started working on my PhD, and I got to the point where, as I said earlier, I wanted to learn more about predictive analytics. So no one at my law school could teach me how to build an early warning system to prevent war. I had to actually go to a data analytics company. So after I met the head of the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, at the time they were actually doing a lot of really interesting social projects with data. Their biggest one was working for NATO and all allied militaries, training them how to use data to identify people who are being targeted by ISIS for recruitment, and running counter communications to those people to keep those kids at home with their families and not sneaking themselves into Syria. So that's a pretty cool use of data. And I thought that was really exciting. And I got involved in the company without realizing how many clients they had around the world or how big the company was going to get. I joined when the company was like 12 to 15 people. So
yeah, so you were privileged to a lot of information that most people don't know.
Well, that's why I decided to start becoming an activist again. I spent a lot of my career being a political activist and being a human rights activist. So when it became obvious to me that this was such a huge issue, I decided to become a data rights activist because there weren't enough voices in the space actually saying, here's a problem, but we actually have some solutions. If you don't understand what are the problems of the data industry and the opportunities of blockchain, it's really hard to make that cohesive argument that we have problems, but we have the ability to solve them, right?
In the Netflix show, you're kind of painted as a Trump supporter, and your liberal side is never even shown there. Not really. Were you really a Trump supporter, or you have a job to do and you're just doing the best you can with your job? I mean, how was that?
Doing the best I could at my job. I voted for Bernie Sanders while I was working for Cambridge Analytica, actually. So
that was not in the movie.
I know.
What else was not in the movie that you wish? What else was not in the movie that you wish was in the movie?
Oh, that I was spending so much time in Wyoming while they were filming that movie. I really wish that they would have actually shown more of the solutions side and how many people are working on solutions to these problems. Obviously, you can't make a movie about everything, so I totally understand. But there's now a massive opportunity because people see that there's a problem. There are solutions and people care enough because the problem is so big. Right. So we have this momentum where everybody that's working in the blockchain industry, we have the ability to say, hey guys, you know what? Are you upset that your privacy has been violated? Are you upset that you don't know where your data is going? Well, guess what? We have some solutions. Not all of them are obviously scalable yet. Not all of them are going to be enterprise level, this year or next year, but we can start to try different ways of solving these problems. So eventually over the next couple of years, we don't have to have this happen again, right?
And you and I both have kind of worked on charity type things. You do something with internet, getting internet to people who don't have internet, or being able to host internet tell me about that. Yeah,
so the first blockchain project that I was ever involved with is called Siglo. It originally started as an app called Piggy that was working in Mexico and Colombia. And if you downloaded this app, you could decide to share certain things about yourself, and you would get targeted videos or articles or advertising. And if you decided to interact with that, you would get piggy coins in your piggy bank. So you'd be rewarded for sharing your data and sharing your time and attention. And in turn, that would pay for your phone bill.
Right.
And now, after that became very popular, it's actually an app by my friends Isaac and Joel Phillips. And the Phillips brothers are completely awesome. And I told them, hey, you guys have millions of users in a token economy, and you guys aren't on the blockchain yet. You guys should put your app on the blockchain. So they converted Piggy to Siglo, and it's now the Siglo network. And they are providing millions of people with connectivity that either normally couldn't afford it or probably would not be in communication with their family and friends in the outside world as often because it would be too expensive for them. So they share some of their data openly, consensually, and they know what they're sharing and what they're keeping private. And then they get rewarded for it. They're not even paying for their own phone bills only. They're paying for the phone bills and the data costs of their family, their friends, if they do, especially if they're gaming or whatever in the app. So it's a really exciting use case to show that if you decide to have a transparent relationship, if you as a company that uses individuals' data, if you decide to tell them what you have and what you could possibly be rewarded with if you share, that it does work. Some people want to keep everything private. Some people are very happy to share if there's a reward there.
Is this the same project with the satellite dishes? Okay, and because I think what we were talking about was like, I worked with an orphanage in Acapulco, and they have very little internet. And you're like, hey, we should put this satellite on their roof, and then they would have internet, and they can sell internet to their neighbors. Or how does that work?
Yeah, so part of that program was triangulating satellite internet in rural areas where there was no internet. So you would put up a small satellite tower that would get about 2 kilometers.
Is this like a WISP? The wireless internet service?
Yeah, exactly. So you would put one of those up. It would give you about 2 kilometers in radius of wireless. And then on all of the devices in that area, if you downloaded the Piggy or Siglo app, then you're using all of that internet for free, right?
There's this guy who he used to do these networks down in Chile. His name was Travis Boyd, and he made something called the Dow WISP. And his idea was that every relay, so if I'm transmitting this and it relays over here and then to somewhere else and somewhere else, everybody along the line would get a little bit of cryptocurrency, so everybody's being paid to prop up the network. And so
exactly, and that's again one of the best use cases of blockchain technology is sharing of value, redistribution of wealth, and actually acknowledging that every individual is valuable and everything that you do on a daily basis is valuable to somebody. So why are you not sharing in that value most of the time? Just because most companies are keeping that value from you. So what's exciting about blockchain technology is you understand how much value you're producing, who wants that value, and you can decide to share it or keep it to yourself.
Right. Well, I guess let's talk about data then, since you're all about data.
Totally.
And what's your motto there?
Yeah, of course.
Own your data.
Own your data, exactly. So one of the most exciting laws, since we are, here in Wyoming, the first time it's ever been passed in the world, is that your digital assets are your intangible personal property here in the state of Wyoming. And that means that you actually have property rights over your digital assets. So that's your blockchain tokens.
I can finally own my CryptoKitty.
Yeah, exactly. So, but imagine, in most other places, if someone were to steal your digital assets, whether that be your blockchain tokens or your data, what rights do you have to seek damages for that? Most places in the world, you have no way of actually solving that problem. There's not a comprehensive legal framework for that. So the idea of own your data is that you have a property rights framework. So like with Airbnb, if people want to use your house, they will tell you who they are, how long they want to use it for, what they want to use it for, and you agree on a price, and they pay you before you hand over the keys. That's how data should be. If someone wants to use your data, they should have a transparent, hopefully smart contract with you where you know who they are, what they're going to use your data for, how long they're going to have it, and then you get paid. And when they're done with your data, you retract it and they no longer have access to it. So we can enable that with distributed ledger technology. There's actually countless apps that are now working on that, and countless different companies that are solving those problems. So I couldn't really endorse any of them specifically because there's so many that I'm sure we're going to see some titans come out of that in the next couple of years. But that's the whole concept. It's giving people more control over the most valuable asset that you produce. No matter what you do in your job, the most valuable thing that you do on a day-to-day basis, technically, is the data that you produce.
Right. Like Facebook, and talk about Facebook and the data that they're taking. What do you think of these new platforms that are coming out that are trying to fight against that? Have you heard of Float? Do you know?
I've heard of Float, but I've never met with them. So do you want to tell me a bit more about what they're up to?
So it's basically like Facebook or something, but they're not storing your data. They're going to sell you ads if you want to see them and stuff like that. The algorithms would be more towards who, you're going to see your friends and not whoever it is that they want to see.
Right. People can't buy your attention.
Yeah, and the disclaimer that you read, I think it's only a couple of pages long, and you can actually read it. It's in English and not lawyer speak or whatever.
Exactly. Legalese is what they call it. Yeah. Exactly. And that's part of the transparency and consent. I would say most platforms these days, nobody reads the terms and conditions because if you do look at it, you can't understand it. And that's specifically meant to trick you into giving away more than you would if they were writing to you in plain spoken English, right?
Have you looked into Facebook, and what are some of the most appalling terms that no one ever reads?
Well, they change the terms and conditions all the time. So, there have been terms and conditions in the past. So some of them they've edited and now gotten rid of, but you're giving them access to your microphone and to your camera. Yes, you would automatically think, okay, well, I need to do that in order to use Facebook Messenger or to post my photos. Yeah, but that's not limited rights that you're giving them. You're giving them unlimited rights to that. So what does that mean?
I think the flashlight app, but there was a flashlight app that even had more. It was like, it was spying on you all the time.
Well, that's the thing. So when you think about what rights you're giving away for the convenience of using some platforms, unfortunately right now it's an all or nothing. But slowly, we're now seeing companies that if you look in the terms and conditions, you can toggle on and off what you're okay with and what you're not. And I think in the future, or agencies like the Federal Trade Commission are going to start demanding that, where it can't be an all or nothing. People have to accept your terms or they can't use your product. It's going to be, you have to give people a choice. So I might want to use your platform. I might be very happy for people to sell me cars and toothpaste, but not happy for political ideas to be sold to me, right?
Right.
So
if people become more aware of the value of their data and they start taking it back from Facebook, do you think there would be a model where Facebook decides to pay you for your information now? Like, hey, all right, we're going to send you some Facebook coins, some Zuckerbucks. What is it called? Libra?
That's what I hoped Libra was going to be, actually. When I first got told about it, I was like, okay, great. Facebook's finally going to pay people for their data. And unfortunately, they designed a system so that they would actually be able to own most of the world's financial transaction data, which is the opposite of what I hoped it would look like.
I think that I talked with the guys from Float, and I believe that's one of their models coming up is they're going to start giving you crypto for your data. So people would pay you for that.
Exactly.
Wants to advertise to you. So you can opt in or out of ads or whatever.
And that's the way it should be. It's really about consent and transparency, and individuals can make their own choice. It's an individual choice. And that's why I love the great state of Wyoming. Everybody here with their libertarian values, like, you should be able to do what you want to do as long as you're not infringing on other people's rights. So, all of the people that are here in this building today with us are spending all of their waking hours making sure that that's possible. So it's a pretty exciting time to be here.
You lived in the UK or what?
I lived in the UK for almost 14 years on and off. I did all of my university education there, and then I worked there for many years as well.
Is it worse there about the stealing of the data and the controlling?
No, actually, for a long time, data protection laws have been very strong in Europe, specifically because of World War II, when individuals' data was used against them through government databases.
But they got a nice star and a tattoo out of it. So
it's still, that's the reason why in Germany they have the strongest data laws in the world, specifically because of that. So Germany, Switzerland, Poland, the Netherlands, all have stronger data laws than anywhere else, Germany being number one. And the U.S. really never felt that. The U.S. has always prized kind of corporate entrepreneurship above individual rights. Companies are people.
Yeah.
So luckily,
Right.
Wyoming understands that balance, that you need to protect people as well as allow individuals to build their companies. So there's got to be a balance. It's possible to do both. The people here are showing that it's true and it's possible.
So as a liberal, are you a gun owner?
I never have been.
You never been? Are you a supporter of gun rights, or?
I'm a supporter of common sense legislation around guns. I would have to say that in the United Kingdom, I felt very safe that guns were illegal. But in the United States, I at least think that the amount of new legislation and background checks that is required is immense, and that the NRA has got it all wrong.
Yeah.
I was a member for 2 years, by the way. So
the NRA.
Yeah, I learned from the inside out what it is that they actually spend their money on, and it's not to protect people. So that's just got to put that out there. But if people want to use guns in their private homes,
I hear the GOA is better. I mean, this is coming from the people at Defense Distributed. We're not fans so much of the NRA, but I think they tolerated the GOA.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between lobbying for common sense legislation and lobbying for corporate values that are just making a lot of people money. And there's a difference. A lot of very wealthy people making even more money at the expense of common citizens is not something that I can support ever again.
Well, we have the guns here. That's going to be hard to get rid of them. How do you feel about gun-free zones? Do you think that's just like a honeypot for someone to run in and shoot, or do you think that getting rid of these gun-free zones would be beneficial? What do you think on that?
It's really hard for me to comment on that.
I mean, because that's the soft target, and that's where they tend to go. So
I don't know. I just think it's sad where we've come to in America today, where people think that more access and arming more people is the answer. Because I think that even that harms regular gun owners that are using that for sport and hunting, like a lot of people in my family do.
I don't own guns either. I don't really care, but I do support that people's right to do so.
Of course. As long as everyone else is protected.
You're getting them out of the bad guys' hands is going to be a hell of a lot harder than getting them out of the good guys' hands. So I think you need to focus on that one first.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of really interesting ideas coming out of presidential candidates about buyback programs, common sense background check legislation, also educational programs in schools. I mean, it's really not my main issue. I'm not an expert on it, so it's probably better for me to leave it at that.
Yeah. So what do you think of the candidates out there that we have to choose from?
Well, there's quite a lot. There's a few different candidates that actually care about technology policy, which is why I think they're pretty great. Yeah. Andrew Yang is definitely somebody who I can see myself supporting in the long run. He is the only presidential candidate with own your data legislation. Data as a property right is actually in his presidential platform. And I mean, the first time I met Andrew, we were speaking at a blockchain conference together about how family offices can do impact investing through blockchain. Yeah. So he was talking about universal basic income. I was talking about data ownership. And he said he was running for president. And I was like, hey, well, if you are this informed on emerging technologies, I think you're going to be a really interesting candidate, and we'll see where this goes. And so I'm so excited to see what a massive amount of support he has. Yeah. There's other candidates that have really thought hard about technology legislation and
is he looking at blockchain voting or any of this?
That's a really good question. I hopefully will be meeting with his team very shortly, and I'll let you know what I find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other things do you think he would be good for as far as cryptocurrencies? I mean, he seems very open to it.
Well, I love that he has universal basic income as one of his strong points. I mean, talking about how you can, one of the best ways to give universal basic income would be to have a blockchain infrastructure, because that way everything can be trackable and traceable. You can really easily distribute to large amounts of people an amount of money that you know where it's going and how it's being used. So I think it's a very interesting way for governments to begin rolling out social programs like a universal basic income. So if we're going to move in that direction, then a transparent, trackable, traceable system seems to be the only right way to do it. But again,
Who, like,
you know,
who pays,
there's a lot of different ways
yeah,
that could roll out.
like who pays for the universal? I guess if we just stop bombing 3 or 4 countries, we could probably pay for it with that.
I'm always a big fan of cutting our defense budget, so I would say that all day long.
Yeah, I don't know how I would feel about universal basic income. It's just, I mean, how would that work? Just money for nothing, or, I mean, what's the criteria? Why should I get a universal basic income?
The way that a lot of people in the blockchain industry talk about it is compensation for your data and your time and attention. So the amount of money that is made off of you on a daily basis that is not shared back with you is quite significant. So if you were just to get incremental value, like a small percentage of what everyone else is earning off of you, then you are creating your own universal basic income. It's the value that you produce every day. It's just recognizing that you as an individual are valuable, and what you do is valuable to companies and governments.
I can see that. I could get behind that, but to, like, just take it from someone else and without permission, like, hey, we're going to take some of your money now and we're just going to give it to someone else.
That's why I believe in the data dividend, you are producing that value yourself. So you are just saying, I own this data and I'm happy to share it with all of you guys so that you can earn money from advertisers, et cetera, and so forth. But I want a slice of the pie because it's my value. So that it flips the conversation completely. It's not like saying redistribution of taxes, et cetera, and so forth.
I'm not
That's
for,
a more
like,
complex and very partisan issue. But if you're talking about value that you are producing yourself, actually getting to keep some of that, then there should be no argument there.
No, none at all.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Is he open to this idea? Or
well,
I mean, because
I'm hopefully meeting with his team really soon, so I'll find out. But you know, I think that more people that have a lot of time on television, a lot of airtime like yourself, a lot of following on social media should start to talk about these issues, because right now a lot of people feel that individuals need to prove that they're valuable, and I think that is a huge problem. Individuals are valuable and people take and profit off of our value every day. So the most I don't want to say just libertarian viewpoint, I want to say the liberal viewpoint and conservative viewpoint, this should be completely nonpartisan. Individuals are valuable and it should be your right to have some of that value that is already used on a daily basis. So
why not a universal marketplace where your data has value and you can just cash it in as you want?
So
so that everybody
I know that some of the people in the hackathon teams here today have helped build data exchanges before and have helped build different types of blockchain-based marketplaces. And so I think that is going to be one of the biggest opportunities over the next couple of years, like data marketplaces that are on the blockchain, so you can actually see how much value your data has. Again, like there are some people that say you know what something's value is when you put it up on eBay and see what people are willing to pay for it. Okay, well, let's have more exchanges that are based on you being able to market your value should you so choose to, right? So we'll see what comes out of some of these really interesting hackathon projects. But I know some of the other hackathons going on around the world this year, data marketplaces are one of the biggest topics, as well as digital identity, which has to do with you owning your data and your digital identity, but being able to share that out and become a data input to companies that want to monetize that. So those are two different sides of the same equation.
Have you heard this idea of multiple identities, like your real world self and your
Yeah.
online self?
They talked about that earlier today in the conference. I found it really interesting that if you're going to have digital identities, for some purposes, you might be
Well,
the.
I don't want to mix up my white supremacist group with with my charity projects and stuff like that.
So it shouldn't be used to hide things that should be public.
Right.
But it should be used that, for instance, if I'm doing my lobbying, then I'm very happy to be a lobbyist or a technologist. But
Right.
in some other sectors, I'm an activist. So that's totally different than the type of self. Me in a suit in Congress talking about legislation is very different than me
at Burning Man.
Me at Burning Man, or in jeans with a big sign at a protest.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think most people have different versions of themselves depending on what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so if you are that way physically, it kind of makes sense to also have a digital option for that too, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think so. That's a pretty cool idea.
I mean, I've never really thought about it that way until some of the people were discussing it on a panel earlier today that I was watching. I thought it was pretty cool.
My Nazi identity. Oh, wait, never mind. Sorry, wrong card.
Well, I hope there's no one like that here.
Yeah,
right. Everyone here seems to be pretty ethical and open-minded. So
that's pretty much across the whole crypto space. You get a lot of open-minded people.
It's actually amazing coming out of political activism and coming into kind of the ethical technology space, where most people that I hang out with, at least in the blockchain industry, have been involved in so many projects building technology for social impact. It's just, it's really exciting to see a technology flipped to the other side. Instead of how much value can you extract from people, how much value can you return to people? And that's why I left data science and political campaigning to explore the blockchain space for the past couple of years. And I've been very happy that I decided to take that plunge.
Most of them are pretty generous. You get to see, like, I mean, what I got to do was, and I just can't even describe what being able to go into hurricanes and help people and build houses for people and just like all this, like, no, I don't have the money to build a house, but someone else does. Let me build it for you. And it just happens because some anonymous people around the world decided to vote on a blockchain to fund this with Dash. And I was able to go and do these things.
That's so great. What were you doing that in Puerto Rico?
Oh, no. When I went to Puerto Rico, I didn't see anything that I could actually do, and I didn't have the funding to do it. I was just going there to see what happened with the hurricane.
Right.
But I had already done that. Like what I did in Houston for Hurricane Harvey.
Oh, amazing.
I took my RV into the hurricane while I approached from Corpus on the backside of the hurricane as it was leaving, and I just followed the hurricane into Houston through Rockport and all these other places. And I gave out care packages to over 3,000 people. And then we bought a boat and we pulled about 32, 33 people out of the water in, where was it? Vidor.
Wow.
And Vidor and Port Arthur. Those two areas there.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. And then after that, it was successful. Everybody on the network really loved it. And then right after that, the earthquake happened in Mexico City.
Right. I was there.
So I went to Puebla. So first I went to Mexico City and I had the funding and I just was looking for what can I do? Where can I do it? And I didn't really go down there with the intention of building the homes. I just went down there with the intention of helping the people out. But in Mexico City, it was just so concentrated with these large buildings. I'm like, well, there's no way I can rebuild an apartment complex.
Right.
And so the people, one of my friends who runs Bitso, Jose Rodriguez, he sent me to Puebla. He said, Puebla really got it worse. And it's the smaller towns out there. So I go to Puebla and they direct me to this other town. And it's called Metepec. And it's at the base of the Popocatépetl volcano. And there was a lot of collapsed buildings and stuff there. So I worked with the city. The city gave me the records of who received the most money and who received no money whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to build 4 houses and a community center.
Amazing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And so some people backed out after I'd already started the community center. And so I ended up paying a lot out of my pocket for that. But it was great, you know, and just to have these anonymous people from that I don't know.
From anywhere
I
in the
don't know.
world.
They have screen names and they're from
Mhm.
all over the world, and they all voted that
Mhm.
I should be able to do this.
Mhm.
And so I went and did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, just I got down in the ditch and helped dig the foundation for the
Mhm.
homes and all this. It was great,
I mean, sorry, it's really emotional hearing that from you, because I was living in Mexico City when
When it happened?
when the earthquake happened, and luckily me and everyone that I knew survived. But that was when I was there working on the Piggy and Siglo
Yeah.
and connectivity project. So
Yeah,
we had
that's why I was asking you about it.
yeah. And so when all of the power was, the power grid was destroyed and disrupted in Mexico City, so the Red Cross and the rest of the emergency services had no connectivity whatsoever.
Yeah.
We had some of those little towers that we were about to go out to different pre-decided rural areas to set up, and instead we set them up in downtown Mexico City in Parque Mexico,
Yeah.
where the Red Cross had set up as the main like volunteer center.
Yeah.
We went and set that up, and so we had 2 kilometers of Wi-Fi.
Las Condes was one of the hardest hits areas.
Exactly. So we started setting these up in Mexico City so that all of the emergency services could actually talk to each other and deal with all the volunteer teams, and get people out while they were still alive in collapsed buildings. And it was incredible. And we literally had that because of our connectivity and blockchain projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to just do that for free for the emergency services and solve a problem that no one else was able to solve at that point.
I think
in time.
the next problem that needs to be solved in Mexico, or somebody should focus on this more, is litter. They have such a beautiful country, and when you get outside of the city limits on just about any city, it's that the outer limits are just like, what the fuck, man? Why are you?
I could say that about a lot of American cities,
Yeah.
but I'm from Chicago, which is one of the cleanest cities in this country, so I'm very biased.
Yeah.
But when I go to New York, I get very upset that a city as big as Chicago is able to handle it and New York can't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like one of the kind of eye openers for me was when I was building houses, the guy that I hired to be like my contractor and to do it, I went over to his house to eat with him, and I had to like walk down this trail and everything because he didn't have a road to his house.
Mm-hmm.
And then we crossed a little river, and it's like a mud hut kitchen down below, right next to the river, and then their house is kind of up above that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting around eating this stuff, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna make me sick, but I'm gonna eat it anyway. So I did. But they just throw their trash right in the river. I was like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
There are places like that all around the world, including in this country, which is why while we're here in Wyoming, the United Nations General Assembly Week, their number one issue is climate this week. And I'm headed back to New York on Monday in order to participate in some of that. But right now they have a massive climate change hackathon, and most of the world's leaders trying to decide how we actually clean up the mess that humans have created, and how we make sure that from here forward we're not creating a bigger mess for ourselves.
Incentive, like those paying people to turn in plastic or something.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
again, it comes back to what I think is another awesome use of blockchain, like being able to incentivize good behavior and being able to incentivize being a good citizen.
I haven't seen this, but I've been told that the Amazon is like one of the worst with plastics and stuff. And someone told me this, that it gone down there a lot. I don't know if you know anything about it.
I wish that I could say that I
Yeah.
have been to the Amazon. I've been to Brazil a couple times, but
Yeah.
never actually made it there. So
yeah, I've
I
been
do
to
hope
Chile.
I've
been to Chile a couple of times, but I never left the conference. So,
Yeah. What conference were you at there?
The Latin American Bitcoin conference.
Oh yeah,
the
course.
last one.
Uh-huh.
And before that, actually in 2013, I went to the Gulch thing with Tatiana. And that was.
I know about that conference. Obviously, I wasn't there, but
it was good. It was obviously a scam. I work in construction, and so I know a lot about that. And what I see the development, I'm like, why in the hell are you using a track hoe to pave a road? That's like the least efficient piece of equipment you could possibly use to make a road with. This is this is not on level, but it was eye-opening for me. I met this kid there who was about 22 years old, maybe, and he was buying one of those pieces of land with Bitcoin. And I had seen Bitcoin in 2012 at the convention in Tampa. I think BitPay was there doing something at the Ron Paul convention. It was called the Paul Fest.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and, I know all about that.
So they just had this little table there, and they were selling Bitcoin. It was $30. And I was like, yeah, that's scam. Get out of here. That's bullshit, man.
Why would you buy Bitcoin for $30?
Oh my God.
They're just trying to take your money.
And then a year later, here I am in Chile, and the kid, he's buying it. Yeah, it's $216. I'm like, what? After that, as soon as I got home, I went full retard and never turned back.
Yeah. So in 2014, he was buying a piece of land with Bitcoin.
2013.
2013. Wow,
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, now it's obviously a lot more proliferated. The laws don't allow you to do it in every country, but it's becoming a lot more common.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's pretty cool. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
No, it's all good. This was great. I'm glad we finally got to have this chat. I mean, we've been talking about doing this for ages. So really excited about it. And so glad to see you again, Danny. I'm sure I will see you a lot in the coming months.
Let me ask two more, really just the kind of, who's been the most inspiring person in blockchain that you've ever met? And what's been like the weirdest experience that you've ever had at going to one of these blockchain conferences?
So especially because of where we are right now, I would have to say that Caitlin Long is the most inspiring person to me in the blockchain space.
The dynamic duo, her and Tyler.
Her and Tyler. But especially because she came from Wall Street and was inspired to get involved in technology that solved problems of ledgers that were not correct and the lack of transparency. And she saw the problems in the financial industry and decided to use the law and regulation to solve that. Obviously, a lot of people in the blockchain space come from more of less of a libertarian, more of an anarchist background, and they don't first think of legislation and regulation as a way to fix things. And I wouldn't say that laws and regulations are always the way to fix things, but right now when we're trying to encourage mass adoption, having the right legislative framework is the most important thing. And she has dedicated her life for the past couple of years pro bono to making sure that the ideal legislative framework that allows people to build companies and allows individuals their freedoms to protect themselves at the same time. And it's just been incredible. And to get to be taught how to lobby in the state Congress by Caitlin was an honor. And so I will always be here to support her initiatives. One of the weirder experiences. Well, I've had a lot of weird experiences in the blockchain industry, usually going around to blockchain conferences. But I remember in the blockchain boom, really late 2017, you started seeing people selling coins for basically anything. You started getting Jesus coin, you started getting Santa coin, you started getting people selling
the Remedy coin guy. Have you met him?
I haven't met him, but
God.
I've seen videos.
It's forgiveness on the blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. And so there are even people that were tokenizing themselves and giving out their own coins. So it started to get completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So obviously some people were making a joke, but some people were actually taking people's money for coins that didn't actually represent any real value or
Yeah.
purpose. And I think that was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I've never, I mean, I was too young in the .com bubble to see all of the crazy things that happened then, but it's kind of comparable from what I've been told by people a little bit older than I am.
I think, I actually, it was probably the one in Puerto Rico. I think it was Michael Turpin's Coin Agenda.
Coin Agenda. Uh-huh.
That one was a lot of ICOs, and it's just like people were walking around. What's your coin? What's your ICO? This is like everybody has to have it. You don't have an ICO.
I know.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, I was actually there to do a panel about Wyoming and the legislation going on, and it was so funny. They put us in a panel at lunchtime because everybody that was actually on the main stage was presenting some kind of initial coin offering for whatever it happened to be. I mean, most of those companies don't exist anymore, which is shock and awe. But people looked at me funny. They're just like, "Oh, you work on laws about crypto? You're not trying to get people to invest in your random, completely unvalidated idea." And that's when I realized I was doing the right thing for the industry. That I had, trying to gather more people that wanted to bring integrity to an industry that is very important, and I will continue to think is very important. And we need more good actors and less bad actors from here into the future. And that's what the Wyoming legislative framework is about.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Brittany. It's
totally
been fun.
Totally. Thank you so much,
thanks.
Danny.
All right. All right.